Have you ever had an experience that's had such a profound effect on you? It's changed your life. One that's challenged your understanding of what's most important to you. For me, this experience took me back to a time when I was younger, when I lived in Africa, to a time where I learned what being wealthy truly meant. So how is wealth in community defined? Well, that depends on your personal take. When I was living in Nigeria, I was shocked by how poverty-stricken people appeared to be. Living in shantytowns on top of one another, foraging for bushmeat if they had nothing else, begging from people like me. And when the government decided that they wanted the land that they lived on, they were forced to pick up everything they owned, put it on their backs, and walk hundreds of miles away to a new location. For so many, life appeared as a hardship. In one shantytown, I came across a woman who was holding a limp child in her arms who appeared to be sick. But as I got closer, I realized he wasn't ill. He had in fact passed away because Mum hadn't been able to afford the medical bills, which is an all too common problem in Africa. I was horrified by what I was seeing. The sound coming from the woman as she sobbed was heartbreaking. It was raw. And as she cradled her baby close to her chest, she rocked backwards and forwards, her head thrown back as she looked towards the sky. And from her mouth, I could hear the prayers in her words as she begged for her baby's spirit to be taken to God. She noticed me standing there, tears pouring down my face as I felt her pain. And she gestured for me to come and pray with her. And I did. And I stayed for hours watching how her friends and family gathered around her, offering her comfort in her time of need. Eventually, as I got up to leave, she looked at me with her red, swollen, tear-stained eyes. And she told me that her baby was going home, going to a better place. Even in her misery, she looked towards the light. She held no anger or resentment in her heart towards anyone or anything for what she had endured. I was utterly humbled by her spirit. As I walked away, I looked back at the woman and her child, my heart heavy at her loss. What I saw was the power of the love of her community working as they cared for her, and I couldn't help but be in awe of their unwavering support. Even as I felt that, I was astounded that those people living in their shantytowns could be thankful for what little they had. I realized that hardship brought them together and they thrived. They didn't have much food, but what they had they shared. And their children were often dirty, but they were happy and loved. And the sound of joy in their laughter as they danced to music on the street was utterly contagious. It was in that moment that I realized that their attitude towards their lives made them far wealthier than I was. So how did this experience affect me, a 21-year-old privately educated young woman? Tragedy does not recognize social status, and 10 years later, heartbreak was to touch my life. This time, it was me who held the lifeless body of my newborn daughter in my arms. I sobbed just as that woman in Africa had sobbed all those years ago, my heart shattering into a million pieces. And I prayed. By God, I prayed for Olivia to be taken to a better place. As that 1 in 10,000 chance, I had contracted a viral infection that caused fetal hydrops in my unborn child. Fetal hydrops is fluid retention around all the vital organs. So, for example, the heart, the lungs, and the brain. Because, just like today's pandemic virus, it was a sickness passed on by someone totally innocent and unaware. someone who to this day has absolutely no idea that they caused Olivia's untimely death. As I suffered in my pain, I punished myself by refusing to eat, and I lost the will to live. But it was my community and my mother-in-law who rallied around me, offering me comfort in my time of need. Just as that woman in the shantytown's community had rallied around her. I will admit that I did hold that anger and hatred in my heart for a long time afterwards, but it was the pain that rippled through every fibre of my body that helped me face all my unresolved issues. Because it was the need to feel healthy again when I had my 2 subsequent children, because they deserved to have a mother capable of unconditional love. By admitting the need to feel healthy, I gave myself permission to ask for help, and I saw a psychoanalyst for 10 years. As I healed, I was gifted with the fortune of knowledge that an extraordinary woman in Africa had in her heart all those years ago. The gift? Unconditional self-love. A self-love that blossomed because of the community spirit I felt in Africa and eventually experienced myself, even though I couldn't fully appreciate it in my own life until much later on. I realized that the power of love builds community spirit everywhere on this planet. It's not about wealth in the conventional sense of the word. It can't be defined by material possessions or money. After all, I remember when Olivia died, a friend came over and massaged my feet. And in all honesty, who in their right mind wants to rub someone else's feet? But her kindness made me feel seen, felt, and loved. What I do know is that money never brought me real happiness or love. Sure, it helped, but in reality, it brought me a fleeting feeling of joy and a warped sense of love, which is why we're always chasing the next house, the next holiday, the next car, the next high, ever bigger, ever better, never satisfied with what we've got. I've realized that not having financial abundance doesn't mean that we can't help one another out when times get tough. There are so many small things that we can do to lift each other up. For example, pop a card or a note into someone's mailbox with some encouraging words, or jump on FaceTime or even Zoom and build your virtual community so that you or someone around you doesn't feel alone. Right now, my community and I are in hard lockdown with an enforced curfew, and we've been like this since the 5th of August, with it projected to continue until at least the end of October. Hence why this talk is being done this way. But it's my virtual community that has helped me feel less isolated and more connected. Another idea to help ease someone's burden, if you can, is to cook for people in your community. During the pandemic, I have lost over 80% of my business. Even so, I made the decision to cook extra when cooking my family meals. I also make homemade pasta, so I would deliver bags of freshly made pasta to people so they could pop them in their freezer. Community spirit is love, and a united community is born through the wealth that the power of love creates. So what can you do to help someone in your community feel seen, felt, and loved?